Hey everyone. In this episode, I'm joined by Andy Crestodina of Orbit Media, a web design and development company that's been at the forefront of thought leadership and digital marketing for 20 years now. We talk about the digital transformation that marketers are being forced into post COVID. We also discuss the research that Andy's team has compiled on content marketing after surveying thousands of content marketers. We hit on the formats and distribution channels that are currently working best for organic content. And then we talk about the fundamental shifts that will need to happen for marketing and sales teams to thrive in this new world. Let's get into it. So, what have you been up to lately?
Oh, well, personally, they're now 3 and 5. So I've got one in preschool, one in kindergarten. Professionally, we've been hiring. So we're up to 44 people. I've been experimenting with some account-based marketing tactics, which have been awesome. Our content is kind of also reaching a new plateau. We're publishing more and more research than ever before. Just last week went live with our annual blogging survey, which is a big, big piece. 8th year in a row surveying 1,000 bloggers about what they're doing now. And correlating answers. So you can see like people who do this are more likely to say, yes, they get strong results from digital. So the team, so it's a year of growth and a little bit of stress. But those of us who are able to stay on top of things and find enough human connection remotely or looking for opportunities to get together in person, things are going pretty well.
So I saw that you guys did some original research with Ascend 2 and Todd Leavitt not too long ago. Some of the report, I guess, that came out was something that was pretty interesting to me because it was sort of talking about some of this stuff. Do you have? Well, let me back up a second. So, just to give the background really quickly on what Orbit Media is, just for the audience that might not know, how would you sort of frame that?
Pretty simple in just a few words. Orbit is fundamentally a web design and development company. We started in 2001, sort of just stayed in that lane. So in some ways, a little bit unusual. We're like a company that didn't pivot even through all of the evolution in that time. But we're also a firm that went deeper and harder and farther into content strategy and topics and publishing and speaking at conferences. And we wrote a book and we have active in, like we said, research and recording videos. So we have a lot more exposure than a lot of companies in our space, and well known for both the results of our work, where we kick ass at B2B lead gen sites every day. We do like 50 sites a year. We don't do anything else. But also, it's the kind of the newsletter, the LinkedIn newsletter now, which is huge. I mean, it's a surprise. And just kind of the thought leadership type stuff we put out. Creates a lot of exposure, which is very good for our demand.
So the way that you're sort of putting together the content strategy this is maybe, like I said, we talked maybe a year ago, and one of the things that you had talked about was sort of rolling out a new sort of deeper dive into content, doubling down, I guess is a better way to put it. And then, you sort of had some video and some other things that were up, but you said things have been going pretty well over the last year. What are the things that you've been working on to sort of help build that out? So is it the original research, or is there something else that's really sort of taken off and sort of created that demand for you?
Well, we are being opportunistic and leveraging cumulative advantages. So in a way, it's maybe the listeners will find this interesting because you can see how one thing can roll into another, and you can, once you get to X plus 1 is not as hard. It's also maybe frustrating for kind of early stage content strategies because some of these things aren't super easy to replicate. Yeah. But a few examples. If you've been publishing for a while and you have URLs that are ranking or almost ranking and detailed content, if you go back and update those articles without changing the URL, it's the fastest way to get more traffic from this with less effort. Basically, recycling old URLs, updating old content, rewriting things with semantic SEO in mind. Boom. Like, it's the most effective thing I've done in SEO, and I've done SEO for 20 years. Another one is if you have pages that are highly visible, or whichever channel, this search, for example, you have an opportunity to kickstart a YouTube channel by creating videos on those same topics and putting them at the top of those pages. So now you've got more content. Those videos will naturally become highly visible and the play rates go way up. And now you've got, all the videos in your YouTube channel are like 1,000+ views. How'd you do that? You just put them on the pages that were getting seen anyway. Third quick example, you've got a body of work. We call it your elbow, your lifetime body of work. If your elbow is big enough and you have things that you could repurpose, you can syndicate those, we'd say, because we are fearless and don't believe in such a thing as a duplicate content penalty. You can syndicate those things by just posting them in LinkedIn. I have a VA who does it, and taking old articles and stripping them up a little bit, maybe working on the headline a little bit, making sure they're relevant to a broader business audience. LinkedIn is kind of a broad audience. Just putting stuff in there. So those are 3 examples of ways in which, don't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. So we're getting results that may not be typical. But generally, yeah, once you're at that level where some of these things are working for you, that's when you can really get the flywheel going. These things are leveraging the wins that you notched years ago to get ever better results without that much more work.
So if I took those the 3 things that you just talked about and put them in a couple of different buckets, there's content creation, right? And finding content that is relevant to your particular users or your particular ICP. And then there's content distribution, right? On the other side, where you are finding the different channels that are relevant wherever your buyers are or potential buyers are, and you're laying out content, and sort of repurposing it for each. I think that's where a lot of people sort of misstep, right? They just sort of copy paste and drop it in and expect it to perform the same way, right? And so LinkedIn is a great example. I love LinkedIn. It's a fantastic organic tool. Organic reach is very difficult to match anywhere else, and yet people really mishandle it, right? They, it's like a great opportunity that people just sort of get the little bit out of instead of the most out of. I've seen your LinkedIn content. Are you finding that that's a good distribution channel for you? Obviously you're in B2B. So how do you find it?
Really effective. I'm using LinkedIn more than ever in a couple of specific ways. One is that, again, cumulative advantages. I have the benefit of having been, I think, kind of smart in who I connect with over the years. So I'm not too restrictive. My rule is I'll connect with anybody who does marketing in any city, and I'll connect with anybody in Chicago in any industry. So that has led to a large number of connections for me, because I remember watching the moment when LinkedIn flipped and became kind of a content promotion platform. And just like any other, like Twitter or any other platform where you can promote content, I knew I wanted a larger audience. So I never looked at it as just an online resume, or at least not since, 2006 or whatever I started using it. So that has led to, that's helped a lot. So it's increased the reach. Then I started getting active on promoting content there. I've always been active and engaged in networking there. So 2 things happened this year. One is I started using LinkedIn as a way to find and connect with people who are in specific industries. Started creating content specifically for that industry, research-based content just for B2B tech, or just for manufacturers, or just for food and beverage B2B. And then had enough of these connections where I just would invite them to come to this webinar where I'm teaching and showing this research and giving best practices. I might get 20, 25 attendees, but they are all ideal client profiles because they are all people who have, decision-making authority. They're working for companies that have mature programs, they $50 million companies.
Yeah.
So that approach to what we think of as account-based content marketing, maybe ABC marketing, awesome. Like it's converting a couple $100,000 in transactions so far.
Yeah.
The other one is not available to everyone, but I think if you're active there for long enough, you might see it flip and turn on. If you start to put an article into LinkedIn and there's a publish newsletter button at the top, click that button, because LinkedIn is now emailing everyone who subscribes to your newsletter, whatever you post in there. So we gave ours a very clever name, Digital Marketing Tips. And it started with like 400 people in January. It's now like 95,000 subscribers. LinkedIn is emailing these articles to like, and people are asking me like, oh, is that your main form of marketing now? It's like, hardly doing it at all. I've got a virtual assistant copying and pasting, so I'm getting I'm paying closer attention to it now that it has such reach. But these are things that I wasn't doing in LinkedIn a year ago, and are things that are both improving distribution, as you put it, and also bottom of funnel kind of sales and driving directly revenue impact.
Yeah, there's very few channels where you can actually point to that kind of ROI against your effort, and then figure, not even budget, like just actual effort.
I know.
And
Yep.
you look at it and say, wow, okay, so how do you do more of this? How do you leverage more of that? That's phenomenal, by the way. I had not heard a number quite like that. I've seen big increases in terms of subscribers, but I've never seen anything from like, a few hundred or whatever to thousand.
Less than 1 year.
Yeah. And obviously a lot of that's, credit. You got to give credit to the content that you're creating originally. Right.
Good point.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not, but the thing is you don't have the barriers, I think, that you probably do in other, sort of other tactics, right? You don't have the reach barrier. Yeah. You don't have, you don't have the sort of, an inch deep, kind of barrier. And so, to me, I look at that and I say, okay, well, let's say you had 20 people that are on your webinar, you're exactly right. All of them are going to be within your ICP. And I'm sort of recapping that just simply because there isn't anybody that's listening to this podcast that can't do the exact same thing.
That one is true. Yeah, I agree. Here, I'll go into it. So that is actually not an easy thing to replicate, but if you create something new, and original research is always something new, that is very specific to a certain audience, now you have like an asset. It's like social currency. It's like this precious thing, where you have new data that shows, like Todd creates at Ascend to, this percentage of these companies are doing this thing. Now wrap that up in a practical format, like a webinar, and the invitation is just very enticing, right? I looked at 100 companies in your space, and I'm showing what they do well and do badly, and it's free. Just if you want to sign up. If you sign up, if you can't even make it, because we'll share the recording. And then so because these 25 people are all ideal client profiles, then the call to action at the end sounds really weird, Eric. I've never said this on a webinar before. Everyone who attended this webinar, I would be thrilled to spend an hour with you in person, over, virtually, to look at your content specifically, crack open analytics. We're going to find the best opportunities. I'm going to tell you at the end of that hour, you're going to know exactly what pages to update with which content for which key phrases. I'm going to have 6 ideas to improve your calls to action. Just happy to audit your site with you anytime. Yeah. So who can say that on a webinar? It's like impossible. You're setting the expectation way too high. You can't just say that on a normal webinar. And I do lots of webinars, and I've never said that before. But these are all people I personally invited. These are all people who are legit potential prospects. So very weird, very fun, and not a dotted line to ROI. You can track back. You get good attribution, right? I can look at the LinkedIn message where I met her and invited her, and now, we're building her website.
4 months later, or whenever it is, right? Because sometimes it happens sooner than that, and but that 4
months is good. I think you're right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and the journey is like, and that's sort of my gut is like and I think when you and I started talking, I was the GM of SharpSpring Ads, and that was that was sort of my day job. And what I was doing was I was focusing on getting in front of people that were potentially interested in doing retargeting beyond something like Google or Facebook, right? That was my job. And so what I was targeting was these people who were very much trying to do the things that we were talking about, but couldn't implement it themselves. And so we would give them, and this is my experience pretty much with everything in B2B. You can lay out the playbook. You can lay out it, and there's so many people that are scared. Well, what if, like agencies especially, what if I give away too much of the secret sauce and then they don't want to come to me, they just want to do it themselves? That is not my experience. My experience is you give away as much information as you possibly can, and you tie it to a strategic narrative that people can sort of like really, really like buy into and understand, pretty quickly. And they will come to you when they need the thing solved. And that is counter to, I think, what a lot of people do. Again, I'm thinking digital marketing agencies, right? You're one of the few that I think do it well, right? I mean, there's just not very many people that do it super well. There's a few in the UK that do it pretty well. I love how Rand Fishkin does his. Obviously, he's not in the consulting business. But he's got a product to sell, and he'll tell you exactly all of the things you need to do, and he gives you the tool, and it's free. Like the sign up, like for the trial.
I know, it is.
You can get it for free and do all of the things that he said, literally step by step. But you'll never do it, right, on your own. You need somebody to help you get it done, right? Because there's a level of expertise, and I think the key word here is discipline that's installed into your sort of your team DNA to be able to do that one particular tactic really, really well. And I think that could be said of like all the things that you do. It could be the LinkedIn tactics we just talked about, or other things. Yeah. So,
yeah, it's content marketing is, in my mind, a giant global contest of generosity, and the brands that give away the most helpful, useful advice win.
Yes,
they win word of mouth, they win referrals, they win loyalty, they win top of mind and just retention. They're more memorable. There are dozens of stories, but really, this is Mark Schaefer's last book. It was Marketing Rebellion. He said, we're past the era of secrets.
Yeah.
Let's say you and I are both afraid to publish that tactic. Updating old articles for higher rankings is the shortest, fastest path to greatest search traffic. Here's step-by-step how to do it. I lay it out, made a video. Everyone who watches that knows how to do it.
Yep.
You may know that. I may know that. If we were both scared to publish it, because I don't want you to see how I do it, and you don't want to see share this with your customers. It doesn't matter. Rand or someone else is going to go make it.
Somebody else is going to do it. Yeah.
Someone is going to do it. Someone's going to publish it anyway. We can't keep this stuff a secret, and it would be a waste anyway.
That's right.
If you care about people, if you want to build a community, if you want to be relevant, if you want to be ever mentioned, you have to do some. If you want to be remarked upon, you must be remarkable.
Yeah.
Therefore, go 10x on something. Like, give it away. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't cost you anything except time. So. Yeah, I spend maybe 1,000 hours a year doing content marketing, but I generate 900 leads a year without spending any money on advertising.
Right.
Literally zero.
Yeah.
Like I have, 6 million in revenue, never bought an ad.
Yeah.
How's that possible? Just by sharing all of our best advice.
Yeah.
It works. It's not a secret. And people that have never been in an organization that had that benefit, or stood under a waterfall of leads, or seen an analytics account where people just convert every day, they don't really know. They haven't felt it. They don't believe it yet. But you are losing out if that's you, because you have competitors who are building that demand gen machine while you're just, deciding whether or not to play.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything in there that I did not 100% wholeheartedly agree with. I think that, and I'm not just saying that because you're the guest. I'm saying that because this is what, I mean, Chuck,
you know it.
If you treat people like they are a prospect, they are going to feel like a prospect, and their defenses are going to be up. If you treat people more like you would a relationship that you are actually interested in having, then you completely change the dynamic. You're wanting to reach out to them. You're wanting to, not sell them on something. You're not trying to get them to be your best friend. What you're trying to do is give some of the value, share some of the experiences that you've had, things that have worked for you, right? And things that to be working, because that's going to help them in their job, their career, their company. And it ends up becoming something that's genuine and authentic instead of something that is sort of just smarmy. I don't know if there
I agree. Smarmy is the word I use.
Yeah.
If you set marketing aside and just talk about sales, which is also relevant here, because shields up, I'm being sold to, I have to be cautious with this person. They're trying to make money.
Yep.
Here's the other approach sounds very different. These are literally sentences that I often use in sales meetings, and I do a lot of sales. I often say in meetings things like, probably we're not a fit for you. Let's talk about it. And I never start conversations assuming that I'm the best fit for a client. Now, I can say that because I have lots of leads coming in, so I don't mind at all if they hire someone else that might be perfect for them. I also say things like, even if you don't hire us, I think that you're doing important work. I am personally happy to help you however I can.
Yeah.
On a series of calls, or reach out to me if I can be helpful in some way, teach something to your team, even if you don't hire us.
Yep.
Like that's disarming to them.
Yep.
Or just tell them things like, our typical website we build is like $75,000. I would not spend that kind of money if I were you. Doesn't make sense. There's not that much ROI in it. You should take this other approach. You should call these people. You should look in this marketplace. You should use these templates or this service. And pretty soon they're like, hey, someone should sell to someone in this meeting. Maybe I'll try selling to you. And then people try to pitch me. They sometimes get mad that we're not open to their projects. And like, I worry about the other form of word of mouth, like negative word of mouth, that, we didn't seem open enough to helping them because we help them disqualify us too quickly. And they get cranky about that because people actually secretly and weirdly like to be sold to or want to know what the dynamic is. And it's it puts them off balance a little bit once they realize, like, you're just trying to be helpful. So we call our salespeople strategists, and they're literally strategic thinkers who will actively disqualify most leads.
So best sales process ever is the one that comes into it trying to figure out if they're a good fit or not. And it is, you see it in sales tactics and everything else, but in terms of like, if you come into it with like the right heart behind it, right, where you're saying, hey, this may not be the perfect solution for you, but, and because this is what we do, we focus on this and this and this, and this is what we do really well, but you need this over here, and then maybe here's my 2 or 3 people that I think I would recommend. That's the best, that's the best way to approach it. And so we have just sort of taken a play, or take on that. What we do is so I have a sales team that's not very big. We've got, 8 people on our sales team, and for the ads business, the little ads business that we have. And so, we stood that team up in January, and one of my big things was I don't want to be like most sales organizations, right, where they're just hammering things. Right. There's a sales cadence, and you get spammed, and bothered, by a bunch of BDRs or SDRs. I think SDRs have the hardest job. I really do. It's like one of the, maybe not the hardest, but one of the hardest jobs ever. And one of the things that I wanted to try to do was like give them the ability to not feel like they were like shoving something down somebody's throat. Right. Mm-hmm. So we started an inbound motion, right, which helped a lot, right, because 50% of our quota was coming from something else where people were actually raising their hand and saying, I want to buy that thing you've got because
so different.
All the point I have. Yeah. And so, so you had that, and then we still had an outbound motion, but the outbound motion or the outbound sales process that we had, it was completely different. What we would do is we would actually talk to people that we knew were already doing the thing that we were doing, like retargeting. And what we would do is we would come alongside them and we would say, hey, look, this might not be perfect for you. And so I just want to start with that up front, right? And so we call our sales team, really what we do is we call them analysts. because that's really what they do, right? They come in and they analyze your campaigns. They try to figure out,
Very smart.
is there something that we can do for you or is there not? And we'll tell you if there's not, and if there is, then obviously, like maybe let's have a conversation if that's something that might interest you. And here's a couple of reasons why, and that's it. Super light touch, very quick. And these folks, like, they enjoy their jobs a lot more.
I bet. I'd like that job.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They enjoy it a lot more. They get a lot more out of it. And they're like, hey, this is not like any other sales job I've ever had in my life, sort of thing. And they love it. And what's the funniest thing about it is they get, like, commission wise, right? I mean, they're commissions like every other salesperson is, but they're like, the way that they are doing this process is so much more effective that they are always like right up there hitting their number. Well, that's not true. That would be a lie if I told you that. I would say 80 to 90% of the time, they're right up there hitting that number. So not 100%, but close, which is pretty phenomenal in my opinion for an outbound motion in this age, right? Today.
Well, I think you'll see
Working from home, and
you'll see other benefits from that too. You're going to see more word of mouth from that.
yes,
You're going to see higher employee retention from that. You're going to see better, lower churn from that.
yeah,
Because a bad prospect doesn't want to be in your funnel anyway. It's just a cost to you in the long run to try to close everybody.
yes,
So what you really want is to work with the people who are going to get the most value from what you do.
yes,
Those lead to the best stories. Those lead to the best referrals. Those lead to the longest, like the highest lifetime value of customer.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a weird thing, that the old school approach to sales was like, try to close everybody.
Yeah.
And also, it's a crap. I think one of the reasons why, like, there's a psychological term for the reason why that job stinks. It's the power dynamic. They're always at a disadvantage in the power dynamic.
yeah,
Someone told me once years ago, Groupon had like a psychologist who would listen into sales calls and then score the rep based on how they manage the power dynamic.
yeah,
In other words, the person who needs the deal more, has the least power. If you, so part of what you're doing in a conversation like that is to, just enter an engagement with equity, right? With parity. So I don't know if you need me. You don't know if I need you. If we have a conversation, we might find out. Anyway, I think the best in the business kind of are nodding their heads right now. There's a lot of people who intuitively know this.
right.
If there's a sales manager on this call who thinks like, close them all and we'll sort them out in the end, bad idea. It's not going to work out. You're going to have higher customer churn and higher employee churn both.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it just plain as day in the numbers, right? Anything after 30 days, 60 days, you just watch. You just watch what happens. And I think, I get it, right? It's human nature. You're chasing the number. So I don't, it's funny. I did a LinkedIn post not too long ago where we were talking about how marketing and sales don't, like which one should sort of like report to like which one should have the control, right? And should the BDRs like report into marketing or should they report into sales? And one of the things that I sort of said is like, well, I'll tell you what my opinion is, but at the end of the day, we're asking the wrong question, right? There's an organizational issue when you've got BDRs just trying to purely chase numbers that aren't in a fashion that actually is helpful to the customer, because you're just going to feel it somewhere else. And short term, I get it, right? Because what does a BDR care about what happens 90 days from now, right? They care about what's happening today. And it's a human nature problem. So I don't blame the sales team. Frankly, they're just doing what they're incentivized to do. It's human nature. I blame the CEO, right? I blame the CFO. I blame, the people that are actually on the executive level that are actually making the decisions to like sort of incentivize maybe the wrong behavior. Now, in their defense, a lot of them don't realize that that's what's happening, right? And so, like, you get into those organizations, and anyway, it's a rabbit hole that we got down. But my point is, like, that's a thing that you can absolutely fix and control with some of the things that you were just laying out. So,
Well, some of the relevance to marketing there is a lot of marketing teams in defense of sales, they produce content marketing teams produce content that has no relevance to the bottom of the funnel, and they're not making anything that the reps can use.
yes.
There's a huge gap in bottom of funnel content out there.
Yeah.
Sales enablement content, content that answers buyers' questions.
Yeah.
So it's you could build a program that increases your brand awareness and relevance, but still be completely siloed from sales. Ideally, every sales meeting is a trigger for some conversation that can be answered through content or supported through content.
Yeah.
It's like, it sounds like this. Oh yeah, I'm very familiar with this. We work with a lot of people who have your challenges. We've looked into this, and I want to show you something that we recently published that shows a path out of this, or enlightens this perspective, or adds some clarity. And now, we're all sharing screens. We're remote anyway. You pull up a piece of content, and there's social proof built into it because it might have some comments and shares. But they see that, and it's got visuals, and you're chatting the link to them. That content is portable thought leadership. They can share that with someone else on their team who wasn't able to make the call, and you just look more credible. It's a more perfect vehicle for sharing your voice and your insights. It's a sales tool because you look, somehow since it was posted, it just looks more credible than your words saying out loud over a call. So I think there are a lot of marketers that just need to step up and publish more bottom of funnel content. They can do so by simply listening in on sales calls or watching recordings, and make sure that you've published something that adds clarity to the top sales questions. Now you guys are working together.
So this is actually a really good segue, because you have a sort of a framework that you work off of, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's basically a framework where you ask clients, customers, and you go through a series of like 20 questions or something like that to sort of get an understanding of what their issues are, what are they struggling with, trying to get in the mind of that prospect that might be visiting a website. And so, would you mind just kind of really quickly at a super high level, just sort of talk through the thinking about like what kind of questions you ask? You don't have to go through all of them, but maybe a few of the questions were poignant, and maybe the logic behind it, because I think this is going to be valuable for the audience. They're going to be able to take that and then use it, not only when they're thinking about their own landing pages and that sort of thing, but it just sort of guides them as maybe a heuristic, for lack of a better word, or a framework.
Yeah, it's the 4-word version of the philosophy behind it is the Marcus Sheridan presentation for 10 years, and then you wrote a book called They Ask, You Answer. Yeah. The thesis sounds like this. The purpose of your website is to answer people's questions. That's why they're there. It's not for you to say that you love you, or it's not to show a pretty design. It's clarity. Clarity correlates with conversion. Specificity correlates with conversion. So it's our framework. Before, I'll put this strongly. You do not know how to build a web page until you have done this qualitative research. Go interview 6 or 8 people, or even 3 or 5 people, and ask them these questions, and you'll know better how to build this page, what it needs to say, what are the information needs of this visitor. Because if you do not answer a question, or if you do not address an objection, they know where the back button is, and they can go visit any of the 50 other sites they saw right before they clicked on yours. That's how competitive content is. So it's not about content marketing. This is about conversion copywriting. It sounds like this. When you talk to the end user and you ask them, tell me about that moment that take me back to that moment that sent you looking for help, right? Because you're trying to find what's the true story in the life of this visitor to this web page. What else did you try, and what didn't you love about it? What are the alternatives? How do they score against yours? When deciding who to use, what were the most important things to you? Now you know the priority, the messaging on this page, right? If you could never work with this again, what would you miss the most? If you were trying to convince someone else to use us, what would you tell them about us? Can you give me an example of a time when this made a difference for you? Before long, so the conversation, there's follow-up questions. It's not prescriptive. You're having a conversation, and you're eliciting, follow-up questions, you're eliciting insights. Now you can build, I'm going to describe web design, really the key, and this is what a lot of people seem to miss. Now you can build a visual hierarchy that guides the visitor's eyes through a series of prioritized messages that answer questions, address objections, and add evidence to support your answers, testimonials, social proof, data. Add a call to action, and you've got a high-performing web page. If you don't do that, your page sounds like a pile of unsupported marketing claims. That's a page without testimony, evidence, or statistics.
Yeah.
Or you've got a page that's basically just like, stuff that you think you want to talk about.
Yep.
Completely missing, the real reason why people hire you or buy from you.
Yep.
Or you've got a page that's just really thin, that never connects. It doesn't use any of the words that they would use. You call it what you want to call it instead of what they actually refer to it as. So it's just, I could share a video or a post. We've written a lot about this, basically we're talking about improving conversion rates or building, high performing sales pages. There is no way on earth to do it. It's not about button color or whether this, parallax scrolling is pretty. It's irrelevant. It's about answering people's questions. That's why, go look at your browsing history. Why didn't you buy from all those companies? Because you were missing some information. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Or you're either missing information or you sort of disqualified yourself because you realized that they don't have the thing that you need, right? And so,
which is success too, right? Get them out of your funnel.
Absolutely, it is. And I was just going to touch on that for 2 seconds. We were talking about we talked about it in let's see, how do I say it? We talked about it as it relates to both a client and a business, right? Trying to clarify their value proposition. They're trying to do all of these different things, answer questions, because you only want the people that are raising their hand, that are actually, good for the product that you have. It's a good fit there. But we're also talking about it in a very real sense. We're talking about it with our businesses, right? So I'm running the demand gen for a marketing platform, and you're sales and marketing platform, and you're running a business, a professional services business, an agency, right? That is helping clients improve their own marketing, and that to me sort of makes it real. That's when the rubber hits the road, is when we're talking about it in that sense, and saying, look, a lead is really not a lead until they're raising their hand and asking, because they've seen content somewhere, or they've seen us talk about something somewhere, and they've realized, hey, this person or this company might actually have a solution for this thing that I'm dealing with right now, today. They might have seen our stuff 4 months ago, but today is when they needed it, because that's when the pain was great enough to overcome, right, the step that they had to take to reach out. And I think that kind of concept is different, because what it forces you to do as marketers is to sort of stop chasing, for lack of a better word, I'm just going to call them vanity metrics, leads,
sure,
number of
page views
and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And then, sort of refines it right down to, here's my definition of success. It's when somebody reaches out and says, I'm interested in that thing you've got. And all of a sudden what happens is all of your marketing sort of it shifts in behavior, where, the type of marketing you do, the type of things that you put out for content, the types of activities that you have around things like podcasts, right? They all, it all changes to, and it's a subtle but super powerful shift from pushing a message to helping somebody and allowing them to come to you on their own time. And I'm completely, go ahead.
Definitely. I think I've heard it said almost that same way. It's rather don't sell to people, help them make a buying decision.
Yep. Yeah.
It's a big difference.
It is. When it doesn't, if you're a marketer, you're a CMO, and you're trying to sort of communicate that to somebody in finance or your CEO, that's a hard conversation to have. It just is, right? I mean, it's just a brutally hard conversation to have. But the sort of getting alignment around how it ties to revenue is really what makes the conversation different, right? And so if you're a CMO, you're a director of marketing or something like that, and at a company, especially if you're, well, not especially, but I'm just going to use B2B or SaaS, like, having that conversation, it does need to tie to why does it matter and how does it tie back to revenue? And there's a whole different discussion, maybe a different podcast episode we can have just to talk about that, right? But my sense is that there are, it's not a sense, I know there are marketers right now that are facing this exact same issue, right? They're saying, how do I get more budget? How do I get more credibility? How do I stop trying to do whatever sales team tells me, even though I know it's the wrong thing to do, right? Where it's short-term thinking and not, and not strategic. Like, there's all of these things that I think people are facing right now that sort of leads back to what we were talking about. And I'm I don't know, you can tell I'm kind of passionate about it, but I just feel like we're missing the boat as marketers, right? It's
true. I know marketers who are, they tell you they're in marketing, and then you find out after a 5-minute conversation that mostly they just make PowerPoint decks for salespeople.
Yep.
Or, marketers who are tasked with pumping out an endless series of medium quality articles. So it's, I've been on shows and we've done interviews with different people, and where the focus is, how do you convince an executive to invest in the right things or to pay attention to the right metrics? It's tricky because advertising is fast and temporary. Content marketing is slow but durable. So it sounds more like an investment conversation than as expense. Because these things that you create in content marketing are things that are still around. For example, I mentioned those account-based marketing webinars we did. I don't care, anytime I connect with anybody in any of those industries from then on, I immediately share the link to that webinar. It didn't go anywhere. It's still there.
Right.
I'll get value from those things for years.
Right.
So how do you draw that dotted line for the CFO and have them believe that this dotted line it's a dotted line, but it's real? Mm-hmm. Some of this stuff, attribution's tough. A lot of the stuff is long-term investment. A lot of the benefits are sort of esoteric. Like, try explaining domain authority to anybody in the C-suite. It's like, oh no, to rank for these phrases, we need to have sufficient domain authority. And to have domain authority, we need sites to link to us. And to get sites to link to us, we got to do a whole bunch of weird, sort of indirect, long-term things, including networking with content creators. So I need enough budget to allow me the time to build these relationships and collaborate with these people. Like, what? Wait, what are you talking about? Hang in there with me for 18 months and we'll rank for the money phrase and you'll get qualified leads every day. But I need you to give me 18 months here at minimum. It's like, they're not going to, it's very hard to sell that, So I think one trick is to use FOMO and to show the executive other successful content programs and be like, I think we're kind of missing the boat here. This is the battlefield and we're not even on it. These people have massive awareness for this content program. Why don't we have a dog in that fight? And they just, there's people who are like, nope, we get our leads from referrals and that's how we've always done it. And then we're never going to quit. Great. Let's always do that. But I want to add something to that because we're missing a big growth opportunity. So it's tough. And I feel for them. My ultimate advice for people who work at companies that don't have long-term vision is just, honestly, Eric, sounds weird, go find a new job. Quit your damn job, man. Go work for a company that appreciates, the value of investing and the new economy. And there's a good job market out there. Just switch jobs, you'll be happier.
Yeah, you'll be more productive. Your career path will go faster. Right? There's a whole bunch of possibilities to it, for sure. And I think I love the FOMO kind of concept there, right? Because all you have to do, if you're talking to the C-suite, all you have to do is show them a slide of the sort of the efficacy of a Google campaign over time, or any paid search, from that matter, right? Or paid social, right? You just have to look at it over time on a sort of a cost per lead basis, and then like that's the number that they'll kind of look at and they'll know, and they'll be like, you'll get them to nod their head a little bit. And then you show them an overlaid view of cost per acquisition or CAC. And you watch what happens to their faces. I've seen it happen 6 or 8 times. And we were in board level meetings and that sort of thing. Not this company, but others in my past life, right? And what I'll see, CPLs like this, right? It's kind of like this drug that we're on, right? So CPL is like, yeah, flat line, maybe it's going down a little bit, but it's nothing dramatic. But then you overlay CAC, it's just doing this over the last 24 months, all right, 36 months, because buyer behavior has changed, like you were saying. So buyer behavior is changing, and all you have to do to get them to sort of wake up and sort of see what's happening is you just show them that line, that constant, because what happens in the C-suite is they feel the symptoms of the problem.
Sure. Yep, they do.
A lot of folks that are in marketing don't know what's causing it. They don't know what's happening. They don't think in terms of those kinds of, they don't think about, the way that your CFO does, right? They're looking at it and saying,
Yeah.
my emails are staying the same, right? That everything's fine, but what's actually happening under the hood is the businesses is struggling, and it shows up in all of these other kinds of ways, like sales and marketing sort of doing this, right?
Yeah.
And
Going in opposite directions. Yep.
Well,
Lack of alignment.
Yeah, exactly.
Pointing his finger. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And so what's happening is like sales is saying, well, these leads aren't any good. You stop sending us bad leads. And then, the marketing team's like, well, we sent you all of these leads and you're not working them. And sales is like, well,
Right.
that's because these things aren't any good. And we know that already. Right. They haven't looked at any of them, but they know. and the bad thing is they're actually right. And I'm a marketer, right? And I'm saying they're right. Sales is right. That's hard for me to say. It's true. And so what happens is a lot of that cycle goes on and on and on, and you don't get any further along to sort of, actually solving the problem. So anyway, yeah, one question that I like to ask people in every one of these types of episodes is what is your tech stack sort of made up of these days?
Good question.
And so you guys are, and by the way, this is not a sales pitch or anything. It's totally just basically asking the question because I'm in a new role now, and I'll tell you why. I'm in a new role now, and my role is to figure out who in our, what is, dialing in our ICP, getting really good at it, and then also sort of understanding sort of like what's going on in the mind. So not trying to set you up for anything. Totally just we can cut this later if we need to. But what do you guys?
It'd be hilarious to get a hard pitch from you after that conversation.
Yeah, I know, right?
So here's what it looks like. The database is of course at the center, right? So we're using Zoho CRM, which is sort of like Salesforce Lite. It's a less expensive Salesforce. It does the job for us. We have a chatbot that is Drift, which we started using when Drift was still in their earlier version before they kind of realigned themselves, and they're clearly trying to go for enterprise now, and the pricing went way up, I think. They seem less focused on small business anyway.
Okay.
The ESP we use is ActiveCampaign, so they are sending the emails. They also handle things like the basic auto response, welcome series emails.
Right.
Yeah, the usual. We use the Google Suite for productivity. We use Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager. We use Hotjar for better measurement. On the SEO side, we have all of them. We use Ahrefs, Moz, and SEMrush. There are WordPress for CRM or for CMS, and just nothing else that far out there. I have friends on SharpSpring. My impression is that there's a market opportunity between HubSpot and Mailchimp, because HubSpot is so much, and who uses all of those features? It's like you're paying for a lot, you know, if you get all that stuff. And Mailchimp is insufficient because it doesn't manage the database or track opportunities or these things. So we are using more tools than before. My perception is that there isn't really the promise of convergence in marketing technology sort of never happened. There's just more tools every year. Like these are not combined.
Yes.
Like Scott Brinker's, mega graphic is like, it's like prophecy every year. It's like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
insane.
Moore's Law. Like there should be a Moore's Law.
Yeah.
Those on that chart.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I think that there's, the fact that we build websites just shows how many integration points websites have with things, and how it probably there was a simpler way to try to do things here, but the kind of the core features are the CRM, sending email, maybe landing pages, maybe a tool for pop-ups or gates and these kinds of things. Like that is, the light version of marketing automation. There's lots of space there as everyone, the millions of businesses go from just basic small business, it's like from Wix to WordPress to what, now they need some tools to help them manage things. But I'm of the belief that you really don't need to automate something until you've been doing it for a while without that. People buy HubSpot before they have any content worthy of being gated. People want lead scoring, even if they have one sales rep. Like, why are you score leads? There's only one of you. You just call it. Why just call everybody? It's weird. So I think people tend to overbuy marketing technology in general, but that there's what they used to call it Confusionsoft, right? Whatever Infusionsoft's market position was, I think the Sharp Springs and the active campaigns will do very well in the middle.
Yeah, by the way, there's no promotion there. We didn't talk about it at the time. None of that, right?
No. Nope. I didn't know you would ask that. That's just my perspective.
Yeah, I think it's a good, sort of a good take. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to include this in the actual podcast or not, but my thing is this, and this is sort of what I'm figuring out with the team right now, because I'm in week 1 at this point. I don't know if you knew that.
Good for you.
But this is my way of understanding. Yes, we're going to create content from it. We're going to chop it up. We're going to do all sorts of neat stuff with it. But I'm also learning a lot from people who are actually in the market doing the things, and like, what is it that they care about right now? And what I tell our folks so far anyway, is like, people are not waking up in the middle of the night in a panic, saying, I need a marketing automation tool. They're just not. Like, it's not what they're doing, right? What they're doing is that they're saying, look, I am behind on my numbers for Q4. I know that's going to continue into Q1 and beyond. I've got 16 different pieces of technology, and I'm trying to stitch them together with Zapier, thinking that they're going to like somehow magically work together, right? And I'm, sort of slapping together all of these different point solutions that are showing up on my credit card, just sort of boom, 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 boom. And they're not built to do what I think marketers need today, right? Where they all talk to each other, they all work together, they all feed off of each other, and they're, make each other better, right? So if I've got a chat bot and I've got an email solution, I want those things talking to each other to let people know that when somebody's on my website, that they've been opening all of my emails and they're consistently visiting my website, and I don't know, and maybe that's fed to my sales, CRM or something else, right? And so my salesperson knows that this is happening when they, are in a call cadence or something, right? There's like all of that stuff. It is completely doable today. And I don't think it's a marketer's fault, frankly, right? We sort of inherited this stuff, right? So 5 years ago, 6 years ago, that's all you had.
Sure.
You had to sign up for
That's right.
You had to sign up for Mailchimp, and you had to sign up for whatever, right? Because there wasn't any other things out there. There was only point solutions or only like little apps that solved a particular problem. And I think everybody gets some points for getting the best of breeds of each one of those like apps and those solutions. But then something changed, within the last, I don't know, 18 months or so to me, where it's no longer like it's not a nice to have anymore, right? You got to have these things talking to each other, right? You got to know what's going on. Buyer journeys are not linear anymore. Like, not that they ever really were, but when we traditionally looked at them, they're all kind of like, but they're definitely not now, right? People are coming in through podcasts and word of mouth and all, like, those are your best sources, right? And you got all of these other types of sources that are not directly, attribution tagged. That's super clear. They're coming in, they're doing this, right? Like, all of the stuff that we just talked about for the first half of this conversation is hard to directly anyway attribute. And
right, it's partly that dotted line.
It is.
Buy the tools and use them. If you use them like diligently, I, for example, I'm having a great experience these last 2 weeks having people out of town. I just go look at Zoho, and the notes are detailed.
Yeah,
everything is there.
Yeah.
I can see it. It connected to email. I can see the threads. I can see the conversation. I know what's important to this person I'm about to talk to.
Yeah.
So coverage, no problem. Right. Someone said this about CRMs. It's like CRMs are like birth control. I don't care which one you use, but use one and use it every time. That's
so.
You've got to be diligent. You've got to be faithful to this tool, right?
Honestly, that's like the best message for Dooley. Like, those guys? You ever seen Dooley product? So Dooley, that's what they do is call notes and make sure that your CRM is up to date and that all your pipelines are updated. That's like, they have a solution for that. And by the way, I don't use them, never worked with them, never even talked to anybody at Dooley. But that is the perfect
Yeah, I don't know who said it. It wasn't me.
It's the perfect message for that. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to use one, and you got to use it every time.
You do. That's right. So, yeah, and I think, I don't know, to me, it's like the customer data, the campaigns that you're running, the tools that you're using to execute against those campaigns, they all, they can't really be in separate systems anymore, right? It's making it sort of impossible for marketers to do what they're there to do, right? If you sort of like Jeff Foxworthy's thing, you're a redneck if, I kind of look at it the same way where it's like, you have a problem, with your martech stack if, right? You're like your I don't know, like your marketing ops person is like spending 3 days a week just pulling reports and normalizing data, right? It's like, it's that kind of stuff, right? And and I'm just trying to, I've got like 3 or 4 more calls this week just scheduled with folks that are sort of working, in different types of technology, different types of
good for you
things. And I'm hoping anyway, you're saying it's like, 5 to 8 conversations or 6 to 8 conversations, I think. That's sort of my goal, like by the end of the week, is to have, around 6 or so conversations where I can I need to feel it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I need to feel it a little bit where I can hear it and be able to, just sort of know what's going on, and know that we're on the right track. So anyway.
Yeah, well, those questions may be helpful. Those questions maybe just put them in there.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Well, I still have the deck that you gave to us last year that have all those various questions in it. So I'm gonna have to resurrect that thing and have some conversation.
Well, we'll share a link right there so you can see that at the top of that there's a video for it. There's I think the page's got all the tips on it. So
yeah, we're definitely gonna drop that in. Yeah.
I have made a lot of content over the years, something like 500 articles since 2007. That one might be the most important because it's relevant. It's universal. It's the bottom of the funnel. It's like, no matter what else you do in social and search and email and ads, What happens after they land on the page?
Yes.
You know, anything times 0 is 0. So a 0% conversion rate, and you could be a genius, you know, a viral marketing superstar, or you could know exactly what Google's algorithm is. Doesn't matter. You've got to have a conversion rate, or else you'll never create demand.
Yeah. So Andy, this was a great conversation. I was wondering, like, how do people get a hold of you right now? Like, do they email you? Do they hit you on LinkedIn? Like, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is probably my best social network for some of the reasons we described. I have my primary set to follow. It's that blue button. Like, there's a setting in LinkedIn where you can change what that blue button says. Mine says follow right now. If you go to more and scroll down, you can click connect and connect to be on LinkedIn. Obviously, anyone's welcome to connect to be on LinkedIn. As I said, I told you who I connect with, and now it's good for everybody to build their network there. And then orbitmedia.com. Something we can help with, fill out the form. We'll get right back to you, and reach out to me, and I'll help you however I can. That's all I do all day, every day. I budget time for it. I'd be happy to chat with anyone who needs advice on any of the topics for which we are relevant.
That's perfect. All right. Well, great. Yeah. So anybody that needs, that finds the kind of conversation that we had today valuable, definitely encourage you to reach out to Andy. He's, just other than just being very good at what he does, he's just genuinely a good guy. And,
thanks, Eric.
I think that a lot of that sort of matters when you're dealing with somebody where you're working with them on a daily basis. So I'm, super excited about talking to you again here before too awful long, and we'll do it again soon.
Anytime, every time. Just say when.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay.